What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to be sharing another video with you all today. Discipline is something that I think about a lot. It's a topic that I've always been interested in, and it's an area of my life that continually I've tried to master, and especially in this phase of my life where I'm living on my own, I'm doing my best to not only make strides in my career, but also to pursue things outside of my career and just live healthy, push myself, challenge myself, get outside of my comfort zone, do things like record videos. I've really been challenged to really come to understand what self-discipline is, what it means, what's at the root of it, and how we can leverage self-discipline to have the freedom and the confidence to live the life that we want to live. When I really think about discipline and I think about all the ways that it manifests in our lives, I think that the root of discipline is the ability to make choices. The ability to make choices between something that is difficult and challenging, but ultimately good for you, good for your development, for your growth, and for your future, and even good for those around you. And then something that is easy, but bad, detrimental, and damaging to your life. Now, I think anyone who's ever tried to stick to a new habit, start a new diet, has made a New Year's resolution, whatever it is that requires discipline, you know that discipline is not easy. Being disciplined is one of the hardest things to do over the long term. It's easy to be motivated. It's easy to do things when you're motivated and amped up to try a new skill, take a new course, start going to the gym, start eating more clean. But once that motivation wanes, even doing simple things like getting out of bed in the morning, getting up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whenever it is, just waking up early, going to bed early, eating right, those things become really difficult over time. And I've been thinking a lot about how to make those choices easier. How can you make it so that making the choice that's difficult but good for you isn't as difficult, to the point where it's easier than the choice that's bad for you but seems easy in the moment. So today I want to share with you all 3 ways or 3 keys that you can apply to your life to make discipline easier. Later in this video I'll go into a more detailed explanation of each of these keys, but first, to give you an overview, number 1 is to increase your tolerance for discipline. Essentially, this just means practicing discipline to the point where you just have a higher capacity for making difficult choices, so that every time you're presented with a new choice, a new habit, a new endeavor, it's not as difficult as it was in the past. And then the second key to making the disciplined choices in your life seem easier is to make the undisciplined but easy choices actually seem more difficult than the hard choice by weighing the total cost of making a bad decision and the negative consequences that it can have on your life. And then the third method to making discipline easier is to basically just brute force it and establish systems and structures that literally make it easier on yourself to make hard choices and hard decisions on a daily basis for the sake of your self-improvement. So the first key to having a more disciplined life is to increase your tolerance for discipline. So what do I mean by increasing your tolerance? Essentially, to increase your tolerance for discipline, you want to practice discipline so often that you essentially reach a state of mind where you're so accustomed to making the hard choice in every single situation that for you to make another disciplined choice, whether it's harder or easier than the past choice you've made, it doesn't take much extra effort to do that. And the key to doing this effectively is to start small. when it comes to discipline, when it comes to starting new habits, pursuing big goals, you're not always going to be successful just jumping in head first. If you decide to go to the gym every single day for 2 hours a day, you might be able to keep that up while you're motivated, but over time, once that motivation wanes, it's going to be difficult to will yourself to do that once your willpower runs out. But if you start small and you approach it with a practical mindset, you'll build that muscle of discipline to the point where it gets easier. So you could start off going to the gym 3 days a week for 30 minutes and just keep doing that repetitively so that even when your motivation runs out, it's not too daunting to go to the gym 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And even if that sounds daunting to you, you can go even smaller. But the beauty of this is that over time, once you hit a certain threshold, your body and your mind just gets used to that habit to the point where the days when you don't go to the gym, when you don't follow up on your discipline and you don't follow up on that habit, it almost feels strange that you didn't do what was baked into your routine. And you'll find yourself almost starting to crave that regularity. And that's a really special place to be in, because once you have that regularity and that discipline built up in the small things, then it doesn't take much more to build on top of that. So if you start small at the gym and you're going 3 days a week for 30 minutes, one day you can decide to do 45 minutes instead of 30. And that's only a small step. And then you keep doing that and you keep building until you finally get to the place where you ultimately wanted to go originally, which is every single day for 2 hours. And that's just one example. It could be anything. But the point I'm trying to make is that you want to start small and work your way up. But if you can find ways to be disciplined with the small things and just practice that routine, then it just becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a part of your lifestyle. So that when you have to make disciplined choices in the future, it's not as arduous as it would have been. Now, the second way to make it so that making disciplined and difficult choices is actually easier is to start weighing all the cost of making the bad but easy decision. So say as an example, you're presented with 2 options. One option is to have a tub of ice cream after work, and then the other option is to cook a healthy meal, right? So on the one hand, you have a very easy option, which is to have a tub of ice cream, satisfy your cravings, enjoy yourself after work, but ultimately bad for you because it's unhealthy, it's probably not what your body needs, and it'll make you feel worse in the long run. And then on the other side, you have a difficult option, which is to cook when you're probably tired, to put together something that's going to require extra effort and also might not be what your body is craving in the moment. You might be wanting something sweeter, something that's more junk food. You might not be wanting something healthy to eat. But ultimately, this is going to be better for you. So I found in life, it's almost always going to be easier to do the thing that's not good for you. But one way to hack this mindset is to start weighing all the costs of that bad option. So like I mentioned before, if you eat that tub of ice cream, you're likely going to feel bad afterwards. You're going to kick yourself for doing something that you shouldn't have done. It could give you cavities. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of negative outcomes that you could think of to make that choice seem a lot less unattractive. And there's a way to practice going through the process of assigning all of the possible negative outcomes to a bad choice to the point where whatever decision you're faced with, when you have that easy choice, but you're able to see all of the negative things that come from it, it doesn't seem so easy. This was a concept that I was first introduced to in college when I had a coach who would always explain to us the importance of preseason training, which was always super brutal. No one ever wanted to do it. It wasn't fun. It was just hard. It was hard for months. But he would always tell us that losing and not training hard is not as easy as you think it is. You might think it's easy to slack off. You might think it's easy to not eat right. You might think it's easy to not take care of your body in the off season outside of practice. You might think it's easy to just not put in the effort that you're being asked to put in order to train your best and win. But if you really think about it, if you don't do all of those things, you're probably going to end up losing. You're probably going to end up not being where you want to be. You're probably going to end up not competing to the level that you ultimately aspire to compete to. And that's really difficult. It doesn't seem that way up front. It doesn't seem that way when you're first faced with this decision of whether or not you should give it all your all on the next rep or not. But when you really stop to think about it and you factor in all the outcomes, it's not that easy. It's actually really, really difficult. I've gone through a number of losses in my athletic career and also just outside of athletics, and it's always hard. Losing is one of the hardest things for me. And when you start to factor that cost in to the decision-making process and you weigh that against how difficult it might be to run up a hill, sprint up a hill at full speed and give it your maximum effort, doing that thing that seems hard in the moment doesn't seem that difficult when you weigh it to the emotional turmoil or the disappointment and regret that you experience from ultimately not pushing yourself. So that's a really intense and maybe over dramatic example, but I think it really applies to any situation in life, and it's something that even after graduating college and leaving the track team, I have tried to apply to every aspect of my life. When I think about waking up in the morning and waking up early to read or to journal or to study my Bible, whatever it is, I think it's difficult to get out of bed and do those things, but then as soon as I stop to consider, well, if I don't do these things, then I'm going to feel bad about myself for the rest of the day. I'm not going to start off my day right, so I'm probably not going to be as productive as I could be at work. If I don't study my Bible, I'm going to have to study it later on the day, which is going to be even tougher and rougher on me. And when I start to think about all those different factors, then it just seems so much more difficult and painstaking to just not get up and get out of bed. So ultimately, this key is really simple. Weigh all the negative costs associated with not making the right decision. And once you make the effort to weigh all those costs, then it's still going to be difficult to make the disciplined choice, but it's not going to seem as difficult by comparison. And finally, the third and last key to making discipline easier, making those choices easier on yourself, is to literally just brute force it and genuinely make it easier on yourself. Discipline is hard, but a lot of times it's not as hard as we make it out to seem. There's a lot of ways that we can customize our lives and build and place structures in our life to make making the right choices seamless. I think in a lot of ways we like to put barriers and roadblocks in our way, either consciously or subconsciously, that make it difficult for us or will trip us up when we try to pursue new habits or pursue goals. But if we just remove those and make it really easy and pave the way for us to live a disciplined life, then making those choices almost becomes a no-brainer. A really good example of this that I like to think about a lot is studying. I spend a lot of time studying through school, through college, and even now just in my free time. And studying has always been something that hasn't come naturally to me. It seems difficult to sit down at a table or a desk and pore over a textbook or watch educational videos for hours on end, taking notes. It just seems boring and difficult. But in truth, there's a lot of ways to make it easier. So one example is to go to a library. This is something that I did all the time in college, and I do even now when it comes to editing these videos or doing any other work in my free time. If you take the time to put yourself in an environment where other people are doing the thing that you want to do, studying or being productive, then for you to be productive, it's not that hard because that environment is spurring you on and it's conducive to the choice that you want to make. Another thing that you can do is leaving your phone at home. That's another great example of a way to make things easier for you. If you are committed to studying and you want to go to a library, although you might not want to leave your phone at home, maybe put it in your backpack, you can just make sure that the devices that would distract you from studying and make it hard to focus and stay at that table and read that textbook for a long period of time, you can make sure that those devices are out of your sight and are not going to distract you from what's important. And another way to do this is to make things fun. Staying on the example of studying, if you find it difficult to study, you find it boring, you could study with friends. If you can do it in a way that's still productive, being around other people that are studying with you allows you to bounce ideas off of them, review together, and just make the experience more enjoyable if that's what you want to do. And I know this seems really simple and can be easy to overlook and just kind of dismiss as, yes, that's straightforward and that's easy, but it's something that you really can apply to every single aspect of your life if you just take the time to be creative and find ways to make those habits and those decisions that you want to pursue a little bit easier on yourself. So that's the final way that I'd say to make discipline easier on yourself. I know that these 3 keys, increasing your tolerance, weighing the negative outcomes of not being disciplined, and building systems and structures to make yourself have an easier go at being disciplined. I know that this list might not be fully exhaustive and that discipline is still difficult, but I truly believe that these 3 keys are a fantastic starting point for anyone who's looking to incorporate more discipline into your life.